In a fit of rage, I snatched first place in the grade from Kenji, who would have thought the very next day his childhood sweetheart confessed to me with her sultry, seductive face. She invited me to drown with her in the sea of lust. As the shameless pervert I am, I said yes without hesitation. I kissed those lips I had coveted for so long, and so my grades slowly plummeted all the way to rock bottom. Meanwhile, I became intimately familiar with every inch of Ayumi's body. On the day our college entrance exams ended, she kissed me first for once and asked me to go to a junior college with her. It was only then that I realized that had been her ultimate goal all along, to seduce me into ruining my future. But what she didn't expect was I simply smiled and waved the Beijing University acceptance letter in my hand. I said, "This year with you was a lot of fun, but my future's more important. I won't be tagging along." The day I overheard Ayumi and Kenji talking, I had just finished estimating my Gaokao score. 720, the exact raw score of last year's top student in the province. I had barely let out a breath of relief when I heard Kenji's familiar voice behind the door. He was chuckling. "Don't think just making him slack off in his studies is enough, Ayumi. You've got to convince him to go to that junior college with you, so he's completely cut off from any future." Ayumi replied, "You can't see his score for 100-something? What kind of decent university would take him?" Kenji said, "Still, better safe than sorry. He's got a solid foundation." Ayumi interrupted, "Even if he somehow performs a miracle, that simp will go wherever I tell him to." "University? Please." At that, the others who had been silently standing by broke into laughter. These were the same people who used to call me bro, now throwing the nastiest jabs they could muster. Someone sneered, "With how hard Hiroshi simps for Ayumi, forget college, he'd probably fight for a spot next to her picking up trash." Another chimed in, "Exactly. Everyone at school knows he went from top to bottom of the class just to chase her. That kind of pathetic simp. He'd do anything." A wave of knowing laughter followed. I heard every word clearly, but honestly, I couldn't care less. For a bombshell like Ayumi, what's a few bottom rankings to keep her entertained? Besides, what they didn't see was how thoroughly Ayumi returned the favor behind closed doors. I thought of how she looked in bed, so different from her usual icy goddess persona. Those misty eyes, those drenched crimson lips. I was just getting lost in the memory when someone else brought me back with another dig. He said to Kenji, "If Hiroshi ever finds out this was all your revenge, he's gonna lose his mind." Kenji replied casually, "Dude, it's obvious. Does that even need to be said?" But they were wrong this time. I didn't hate Kenji. In fact, I was thankful. After all, someone like me, broke, average-looking, a total nobody, could never have scored a goddess like Ayumi if he hadn't handed her to me himself. From a young age, I knew one thing. Every skill point I had was poured into academics. Other students needed hours to memorize a passage. I could recite it backward after just one read. Concepts clicked instantly for me. Tough problems? Child's play. But I also knew in a mediocre little county like ours, being too outstanding wasn't a good thing. So even though I needed to rank first every year to win the scholarship, I always kept my score within 5 points of second place, Kenji. Only once did I break that rule. It was the day before a monthly exam, and I saw Ayumi kissing Kenji outside the testing hall. The handsome, charming boy and the delicate, lovely girl. It should have been a scene straight out of a manga, but all I felt was blinding jealousy. In the math exam, I couldn't help myself and solved an extra problem. In the physics exam, I stubbornly answered all the multiple-choice questions correctly just to prove a point. That month, I scored 35 points higher than Kenji. 4 days afterward, I beat myself up for losing control until the third day, Ayumi showed up in front of me. She wore a blue pleated skirt, walked over shyly, her gorgeous face tinged with pink. She whispered, "Sorry, Hiroshi, I worked on a few problems, but I'm not sure if I got them right. Can you help me check?" Even with my toes, I could have guessed that she didn't ask me to check the test but to check the chest. And I knew very well Ayumi approaching me had everything to do with Kenji. Maybe it was his order, maybe it was just part of their twisted game. But whatever the reason, it was my one and only chance to get close to Ayumi. That's right, I wanted her from the moment I laid eyes on her. I have to say, Ayumi couldn't have shown up at a more perfect time. For the 18 years before her arrival, I had only one. When my father was drowning in gambling debt and his fists rained down like a storm on me and my mother, when my mother, broken and desperate, dragged me up to rooftops and threatened to throw me off just to cut ties with him, I told myself, get into the best university, escape this place. Not once did I let that thought slip. I never dared slack off. Even when I picked up a random test paper, a notoriously hard 2022 new Gaokao Type 1 math sheet, I still breezed through it with a perfect score. I knew then that the best university in the country was already within reach. I just had to wait for the entrance exam and strike true. But when I looked back on my dusty 18-year life, all I saw was a depressing childhood and numbing hard work. That day, the TV was replaying Margot's Dangerous Liaisons. As I stared at her stunning, seductive face, I found myself thinking, if I could date a beauty like that, even if I died afterward, it'd be worth it. And then Ayumi appeared. She was younger and even more breathtaking than Margot from Dangerous Liaisons. Her skirt fluttered just enough to tease a glimpse of her jade-like legs, awakening a desire in me that I had buried deep down. I wanted her, but I couldn't have her. Like I said, all my stats were maxed out in academics. Everything else about me was painfully average, just another forgettable face in the crowd. Someone a girl like Ayumi, always the center of attention, would never even glance at. But now she had been personally handed to me by Kenji. I pretended not to notice the obvious setup, and I gladly accepted every calculated coincidence Ayumi threw at me. In the noisy cafeteria, in the empty gymnasium after hours, Ayumi always found a way to bump into me. She started lingering longer, her gaze becoming more drawn out, more deliberate, until one day she walked up to me with a blush and her head down. She said, "Hiroshi, I like you." I pulled her into my arms, pretending not to notice the hint of disdain hidden behind her long lashes. I just closed my eyes and breathed in that wonderful scent of lavender and shampoo from her hair. They say there's gold in books and beauty among the lines. The ancients didn't lie, but I knew too this beauty would only be mine for a little while. Maybe soon she'd end the whole revenge game, dump me in front of everyone to give her childhood sweetheart his satisfaction. Or maybe she wanted to play a little longer, let me fall even deeper than pull the plug. What I didn't expect was that this jade-like woman came into my life to shatter my house of gold. The first time I realized that was in a karaoke room. I was sitting quietly on the couch doing practice questions. She had been happily picking songs just moments ago, but suddenly she tossed the mic down, visibly annoyed. I heard her and looked up, asking, "What's wrong?" She stared at me for a while, then muttered with wounded eyes, "I don't like it when you're solving problems next to me." I was happy to oblige a pretty girl. I swept the papers aside and said, "Okay, I won't." She kept staring, her voice now almost sulky. "I feel like there's too much distance between us. I don't like this." My heart skipped, something clicked. I asked, "Then what do you want?" She leaned in suddenly, close enough that I could see the trembling of her lashes. In a soft, teasing voice, Ayumi said, "Can't you be a bad student just like me?" The blue light from the karaoke screen shimmered in her glassy eyes, like a siren luring her prey. She whispered, "Hiroshi, come into my world. Stay there with me forever." At that moment I was nearly euphoric. So this is what she wanted. This is what Kenji wanted. I pulled her into my arms and traced the lips I had coveted for so long with a smirk. I said, "Then let me kiss you." I knew Ayumi didn't like me, didn't even like being touched by me. In the past, I had always kept my distance, afraid that crossing a line would make her reject me and end the game at any moment. But now she wanted something from me. An exchange was not only reasonable, it was necessary, right? So when I finally pressed my lips to that soft, dewy, red mouth, I silently thanked my past self, the boy who had buried his head in textbooks for 12 long years. Hiroshi, heaven really didn't let you down. I stopped reading, stopped studying. Day after day I abandoned all ambition, consumed by lust. Naturally, my grades started dropping. The first thing I gave up was the top rank, back to Kenji. When the teacher announced that year's number one for the first time, and it wasn't me, Kenji nearly lost his mind with joy. He took the report card and stared at it like it was gold, a smile at the corners of his mouth refusing to stay hidden. I noticed the smug glance he threw at my score, all casual on the surface but full of pride. I pretended not to see it. Instead, I quietly thought to myself, time to go collect my reward. Sure enough, Ayumi was in a great mood that day. She ran toward me from afar, her skirt catching the wind and sunlight like a blooming flower. Maybe that's why when I held her again, I still felt warmth. I asked her why she was so happy. She smiled and said, "My idol won a match today." I smiled too, pretended not to understand what she meant. Then I gently slipped a hotel key card into her palm and said, "Today's my birthday. Celebrate with me, will you?" I thought I'd be the rookie that night, someone who needed guidance. But to my surprise, even someone as flirtatious as Ayumi had never done it before. Her feigned allure didn't stand a chance against my years of deep diving through anatomy diagrams, comprehensive inference training, and highly developed spatial reasoning skills from endless problem solving. Seeing her beneath me, eyes tinged red, biting her lip to stifle any sound. That was the moment I truly understood the saying, "What is learned from books always feels shallow. True understanding comes only through experience." I may have misjudged the rhythm a bit, though. The next day, Ayumi could barely speak, her voice completely gone. Women often try to seduce men into submission with beauty, but what I came to realize, for them sex and love are inseparable. After her first taste of it, Ayumi was clearly hooked. In bed, she indulged herself fully, and off the bed, she began to show a closeness toward me, subtle and unconscious. Kenji picked up on it quickly. He started to sense danger. After another wild night with Ayumi, Kenji cornered me in the restroom, rage radiating off him. He stared at the faint lipstick mark peeking from my collar, his fury almost tangible. Yet he held it in, spitting out sarcastically, "You really have the energy for this, huh? Doesn't it get boring doing the same thing over and over?" I calmly dried my hands, then looked up and smiled. "Well, where else should I spend that energy if not on my girlfriend?" I let my voice draw on, studying him. Kenji walked away defeated. That day, I still remember his face. The burning anger, yes, but also the seething promise buried beneath it. He was telling me to enjoy it while it lasted, and today might be the day he makes good on that promise. The bystanders quickly got the hint and left, clearing the space for the real leads of this story. Through the crack of the door, I saw Kenji pull Ayumi onto his lap, gripping her hand a little too eagerly. He said, "Ayumi, it's been a while since we got intimate. Once Hiroshi finishes submitting his college application, just dump him and come back to me. I keep my promises, ruin him, and I'll make you my official girlfriend." As he leaned in to kiss her, Ayumi turned her head to dodge it. Even she probably didn't know why she avoided it. A flicker of confusion passed through her eyes after she did. Leaning against the wall, I couldn't help but let out a silent laugh. In many ways, Kenji and Ayumi were alike. Ayumi was born seductive and Kenji was a natural flirt. No matter how many partners they each cycled through, they always seemed tied up with each other. So the day I made it official with Ayumi, I told her to stay away from Kenji. She promised readily, but of course she still met him in private, still hopped on the back of his motorcycle for joyrides. I swallowed my own words like a joke, covering my eyes to pretend I was blind, plugging my ears to pretend I was deaf, because I had no leverage. Until that day in the KTV, I found my leverage. After that, I never mentioned Kenji again. Whenever she went to see him, I said nothing, just picked up my backpack and went straight to the study room. And then my name quietly climbed the next test ranking list. So Ayumi gave in. She started avoiding Kenji, the boy she'd grown up with, and in return, I paid it back in full by fully anchoring myself at the bottom of the score rankings. Ayumi's most radiant youthful years finally belonged entirely to me, and I was thoroughly satisfied. Kenji couldn't hold it in anymore. Grinding his teeth, he spat, "You avoiding me in front of Hiroshi is one thing. But now he's not even here, and you're still acting like some loyal widow. Ayumi, don't tell me you've actually fallen for that nerd." Ayumi pursed her lips, then scoffed coldly. "You were the one who told me to seduce him, weren't you? If I hadn't stayed chaste for him, how do you think you got all those first-place scores? And now that you got what you wanted, you're turning on me." Kenji snapped. "I never told you to go that far. Where were you two for the past half-month after the college entrance exam? What the hell were you doing with that loser? Huh? Answer me." I smiled. "What were we doing? Exactly what two consenting adults should be doing. Sunset to sunrise, no breaks." I understood why Ayumi had become so clingy out of nowhere, and I was willing to compose a perfect final duet with her. But I'd seriously overestimated my stamina. By the time we hit halftime, I was completely out of energy. She still wanted another round, and I had to slip away while she was in the shower. That's the only reason I even managed to find time half a month later to estimate my own score. Of course, Ayumi wasn't going to say any of this. She turned her face away, her fingertips unconsciously tightening. Kenji, burning with rage, raised his hand as if to slap her, but in the end he just grabbed the back of her head and kissed her hard. This time, Ayumi didn't dodge. I rested my fingers on the windowsill and started silently counting. Ayumi loved deep kisses. When she kissed, she always started by softly nibbling at the corners of the lips, like a kitten, gently coaxing and teasing. Just when you started to get into it, she'd pull away, playing coy, forcing you to pounce, to conquer, to steal every last breath from her lungs. It took exactly 2 minutes. I tapped my fingers, not rushing. Then as strands of silver glistened between their tangled lips, I reached out and pushed open the door. In that moment, what I wanted to perform was a perfect caught-in-the-act scene. But the second the door opened, I had a new idea. What's the point of petty tricks? Why not go straight for the grand finale? I quickly shifted into a surprised expression, looked at the two startled people inside, and said, "Just you two? Where's everyone else? Weren't we supposed to check our scores together?" That's right. Today was the day our Gaokao results came out. In previous years, everyone checked from home and sent screenshots to the school, but this year the principal had suddenly decided to gather all the students at school to check scores in unison. I knew whose idea this was, Kenji's. Reason: he estimated a score of 656, the highest in the history of our under-resourced county-level school. He needed us background characters to cheer for his moment of triumph. Reason 2: he couldn't wait to see with his own eyes how his lifelong rival who used to always be ahead of him would now be dragged into the mud and crushed under his heel. Ayumi's flustered expression hadn't fully faded, but when she heard my words and realized I hadn't said anything else, her brows slowly relaxed. She was just about to respond, and I turned sharply and added, "But why are your lips so red? Did you eat something that didn't agree with you?" Even if I don't go all in on this scene, at the very least I can trip up a cheater or two, right? Ayumi's body went stiff in an instant. Before she could stammer out a lie, footsteps echoed loudly in the hallway. Moments later, the principal barged in with a crowd of people behind him. Here. Set the camera up right here," he ordered. "Is the live stream signal good? Sound equipment, has it been tested?" Watching the chaos unfold before me, I slowly curled my lips into a smile. Clearly, he wanted to record his son's moment of glory and broadcast it live to the entire world. Well then, since our dear principal went to such lengths to build this stage, why don't I make sure it ends with one hell of a show? The principal's arrival broke the subtle tension between me and Ayumi. She quietly let out a breath and hurried over, tugging on my sleeve. "It's almost 9 o'clock. We should hurry and find a computer." I smoothly slid my arm out of her grasp and replied, "All right." As the clock neared 9, the computer room filled with anxious students. Those lucky enough to grab a machine first hovered nervously over the check results button, sweating bullets. Those still in line behind them looked like they were ready to pounce and press the button themselves. Soon the air was filled with gasps and shouts of disbelief. Someone yelled, "I broke 600. Mom, your son's finally got a future. 211, here I come." Another shouted, "What the hell, did they misgrade me? I only got 68 in physics." As more and more results popped up, Kenji's screen remained stuck loading. He was about to explode, but just as he opened his mouth to curse, he caught sight of the camera lenses all pointing at him and swallowed his words. Finally, after refreshing again, his results loaded. Kenji's eyes widened, scanning line by line. Then he burst out, 660. That's 4 points higher than I estimated. Dad, I can get into Fudan. He jumped out of his seat and threw himself into the arms of the principal, who was equally flushed with excitement. The live stream chat lit up, viewers from all walks of life flooding the screen with messages of congratulations. Congrats on making the honor roll. A new chapter in life begins. In a place with limited educational resources, this kind of score is truly impressive. Thumbs up. Kenji basked in the glow, thanking the chat with a dumb grin, bowing again in appreciation. Then suddenly, he turned his gaze to me. Our eyes met, and the smile on his face grew even wider. He couldn't wait to show me off to the audience. He said, What most of you don't know is the top student at our school wasn't me. It was this guy, Hiroshi. He dragged out my name with dramatic flair. This guy here held the #1 spot for an entire year. The chat exploded. Then let him check his results too. Let's see what the former #1 is made of. Kenji saw that message and nearly died of satisfaction, but he still put on a pitying look and said, "Unfortunately, Hiroshi kind of lost his way. Got caught up in romance. His grades plummeted. Now he can barely break 400. The chat blew up faster than ever, but surprisingly, instead of mockery, most of the comments were full of regret and sorrow. Kid, when you grow up you'll realize throwing away your studies for some fleeting love is so immature. Such a shame for a former top scorer. I still regret not studying hard in high school. All my friends got into good universities and landed great jobs. Me? I blew it. If I had one more chance, I'd give it my all. But hey, you only understand these things after going through them. Don't be discouraged, kid. It's never too late to try again, and you're still young. You've got time to start over." None of these were the responses Kenji had hoped for. His face darkened for a second. Then he forced a smile and said to me, "Exactly. It's never too late. So come on, Hiroshi, check your score. Let's see where your restart begins." Ayumi had already checked hers, exactly 400. She looked at my frozen hand hovering above the mouse and said, whether out of sincerity or sarcasm, "It's okay, Hiroshi. Your score is always a few points higher than mine. I got 400, so you're probably a little over. We can apply to a junior college in Shanghai together. We'll still be together." Huh, a junior college in Shanghai? What a perfect setup for them to humiliate me for 4 more years. These two really know how to play dirty. At Kenji's signal, every camera turned to me. All the eyes in the room and over 50,000 live stream viewers locked on my screen. Kenji pressed again, this time impatiently. "Come on, Hiroshi, we're all waiting." I smiled. "All right then," and slowly reached for the mouse. Kenji scoffed. "Hiroshi, don't take it so hard. Trade school's not that bad. Sure, the teachers suck, but at least the tuition's expensive. Sure, the job prospects are awful. But hey, the campus is trash too." But in the very next second, the screen refreshed, and the smug grin froze on Kenji's face. "What the hell? No way. Dad, get the IT guy. The system's glitched. Hurry." But no one cared about his meltdown anymore, because right there on the massive live stream screen, a line of blank scores appeared, followed by a single line of black text. The chat paused for a beat, then it exploded like fireworks. Holy, did I see that right? Blank scores? That's a shielded student. Top 50 in the whole province. Didn't they say he was headed for a junior college? What is this kid even? Thank God I clicked into this stream by chance. Am I about to witness the birth of the province's #1? Someone tried to be level-headed. Okay, top 50 is amazing, sure, but there's only one #1 in the province. Let's not get carried away. The next second, my phone resting silently on the table lit up with, "Hello, Hiroshi. I'm Ms. Lee from the W Province Admissions Office of Capital University. Congratulations on your outstanding Gaokao performance. We'll be arriving this afternoon at 2 p.m. The chat froze again, then roared back to life. They're already reaching out? This speed? He's definitely the top scorer. No way around it. Top university reps rushing overnight? I bet other elite schools are on their way too. Damn, how is someone's life allowed to be this cool? I wouldn't even dare dream of this. Everyone move aside. Quit the sentimental crap. Let me touch the screen for luck. May my lazy son catch some of this divine energy. Touching for luck, +1. +2. +3. Ayumi stared at everything unfolding before her like a dream, her eyes completely unfocused from the shock. Kenji, meanwhile, was screaming profanities off to the side, but a swarm of reporters surged forward, pushing Ayumi out of the crowd. She was nothing but a nameless extra now. How could she compete with the first ever provincial top scorer in our county's history? Even the principal and his son, who had invited these reporters in the first place, were now shouting themselves hoarse off to the side. No one even spared them a glance. Kenji could do nothing but stand there raging helplessly. That live stream hit a peak viewership of over 1 million. Clips from the stream went viral across every platform. My name suddenly on everyone's lips nationwide. People were obsessed with the dramatic, from junior college failure to Beijing-bound prodigy. Speculation ran wild. Someone even set up a betting pool. Can the junior college kid really be the Gaokao top scorer? It got over 7 figures in participants. 3 days later, my actual Gaokao score was released to the public, 726. A raw score that shattered the W Province science track record. I was officially crowned the provincial valedictorian. The entire internet went insane. Even web novels wouldn't dare write it like this. We just witnessed the birth of a legend. That night, a major national media outlet shared the clip of me checking my results. Their caption, "They say it's harder than ever for the poor to rise, but some youth defy the wind and fly." At the same time, curious viewers began re-watching the stream, noticing the strange tension between me, Ayumi, and Kenji. Students from our school who had been holding their tongues finally came online to spill the tea. One comment, "I go to number 1 high school. I'll tell you everything." Ayumi was actually Kenji's girlfriend. Kenji got salty because Hiroshi kept beating him for top spot, so he made his pretty girlfriend seduce Hiroshi. They skipped class, drank, partied, tried to ruin him. But guess what? Hiroshi is a legit genius. He pretended to fall, ranking at the bottom to lull them in, then blew them out of the water with the Gaokao. Kenji's live stream breakdown? We all saw it. Justice. Absolute justice. This is the ultimate revenge arc. Genius student outsmarts scumbag couple, plays the seductress like a fiddle, then turns around and gets into freaking Beijing University. Even novels don't go this hard. Hiroshi is my one true god. He aced the exam and bagged the school bell. Role model status unlocked. When Ayumi called me, I just happened to be scrolling through these comments, laughing to myself at every post. In fact, ever since the results were announced, she'd been calling nonstop, but I hadn't had the time. I was busy managing my newfound fame. Traffic is fleeting, you've got to strike while you're hot. My past was full of struggle, the road ahead is still unclear, there's a long way to go and a lot of bills to pay. So I got to work. I started doing live stream tutoring. At the same time, I compiled all my high school notes across every subject and released a beautifully structured digital version of the valedictorian study notes, including my personal strategies and methods. It sold like wildfire. Students from all over left glowing comments saying my methods gave them hope and direction. They begged me to release more content, more insight, more guidance. With that growing support, my notes sold even better. When sales hit 8 figures and revenue crossed the 10 million yuan mark, I finally looked at the reflection of the confident young man in the mirror and let out a long breath. At last, I had laid the foundation, the very first brick of my golden palace, and finally, I had carved out a future where the clouds had truly cleared. I was about to decline Ayumi's call like I always did, but this time, she ended the stream herself. At the same moment, several text messages popped up. "Today's my birthday. Can you come see me just once? I sent you a same-day delivery. I'll wait for you as long as it takes." The doorbell rang. The delivery had arrived. It was a room key, the exact same kind I had handed her exactly 1 year ago. Funny, isn't it? The story had come full circle. Only this time Ayumi and I had swapped roles. Room 401 wasn't fully closed when I pushed it open. Ayumi threw herself into my arms without hesitation. She clung to me with every ounce of her strength. Warm tears slid down my neck. She choked out, "I don't care if you lied to me. I don't care whether you scored high or low. I just want to be with you. Wherever you go, I'll go. If you're heading to Beijing, I'll apply to a nearby school. Let's stay together, okay? Please." She looked up at me, eyes glistening with tears at the corners, heartbreakingly beautiful. I raised my hand, gently brushing her hair like I always used to in our tender moments. But the words that came out were ice cold. I said, "Won't Kenji be mad you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, Ayumi?" Her face went pale in an instant. "You heard everything?" she whispered, looking into my eyes. Her voice trembled. "No, Hiroshi, that was the past. I didn't know you. I didn't see Kenji for who he really was. I got tricked by his sweet talk, that's all. That's why I agreed. But I regret it. I've regretted it for a long time now. I finally understand how I feel, Hiroshi. I like you. I really like you. The past, let's leave it behind, okay? Let's start over." Her eyes brimmed with hope, so soft, so hard to reject. But I'm Hiroshi and I don't have a soft heart. So I opened my mouth and said calmly, "Did you hear that, Kenji?" Ayumi froze. Then she looked down and saw the ongoing call on my phone. "Caller, Kenji." His voice came through the speaker like a demon risen from hell, each word dripping with venom and hatred. You filthy whore, Ayumi. You think you've won? Don't get cocky just yet. So what if you got into Capital University? You're still trash, and I've got plenty of ways to crush you. And you think you and that loser still have a future? Let me tell you something, he knew. He knew our plan from the start. You were just a tool, a disposable toy in his revenge game. He's done playing with you now, and just like trash, he's going to throw you away. Bang! Ayumi hurled the phone across the room, silencing everything. Her body shook from the mix of fear and humiliation. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. After a long pause, she suddenly lunged toward me, sobbing, and kissed me frantically. She started pulling off her camisole. When I didn't react, she reached for the buttons on my shirt. I didn't stop her. I just watched, expressionless. This was her pattern. Every time I caught her sneaking off to meet Kenji, she would try to win me back with her body. In Ayumi's mind, there was probably no problem one night in bed couldn't solve. But Ayumi, oh Ayumi, how could you be this naive? Her breathing quickened. My shirt was halfway open, and then everything came to a screeching halt. Her eyes widened in horror when she saw something on my chest. What? What happened to your body? I smiled and pointed to a jagged scar. You mean this one? Kenji burned me with a cigarette. And this? I pointed to the other side where a crude word was etched into my skin. He said I was lower than a dog and that I had no right to desire things I didn't deserve. So he carved the word dog into my chest with a compass to remind me of my place. We'd had sex countless times before, but always under the cover of darkness. Today was the first time Ayumi had seen my scars, all thanks to her beloved childhood sweetheart. Her mind went blank. She tried to pull away, but I wouldn't let her. I gripped her trembling hand and dragged it lower, down to my waist. Here, too, there was a patch of missing flesh, the blood vessels visible beneath where skin should have been. He had his dog bite me, bit me, and ripped. He said he liked watching dogs fight. That pain, he said, would teach me my place. Ayumi's voice started to shake. Why? Why would he do that? I looked her straight in the eye and said, for the same reason you got close to me. I stroked her flawless face. Ayumi, did you ever wonder? Kenji is the principal's son. If he wanted to crush me, he had 100 ways to do it. But instead he chose you. Why? Because every other path I had already blocked. I had been bullied by Kenji at school for a long time, ever since the day I came first in our freshman year. He cornered me in the bathroom and wiped my face with used toilet paper one swipe at a time. Gritting his teeth, he said, I was top of the class for 3 years in middle school, and now you just come in and snatch that from me? He balled up the dirty paper and shoved it into my face, saying, filthy. Don't spit it out, swallow it. If you spit it out, I'll smash your mouth in. But I wasn't some coward who'd stay silent after being bullied. So I told the teacher. The teacher was silent for a long while after hearing me out, then took me to the principal's office. The principal adjusted his expensive suit and frowned as he asked me, Hiroshi, my son might be a bit arrogant, but tell me, is it really completely his fault for taking what was yours? He patted my shoulder and said, you see, people should learn to reflect on themselves and stay humble and obedient, don't you think? That's when I realized I wasn't allowed to be first in class. Back then, my mother had divorced and remarried. My father had disappeared, fleeing his debts. I had been kicked out of the house by creditors. The scholarship was the only way I could afford my tuition. Now that it was gone, how was I supposed to pay for school? I got a part-time job. After night classes, I worked at a small restaurant, helping the owner serve dishes and wash plates. The lady boss was kind. When there were no customers, she let me nap on a bench and often complained I was too skinny, sometimes stir-frying me meat dishes to nourish me. But one day, a regular customer who always praised how hard-working I was for my age reported her for employing a minor. She was fined a large sum and had her license revoked. I gave a bitter laugh. You see, life is always harder for the poor. That's why that night I sat at the garbage station on the street corner all night, and I thought, I have to come first again. I need to stay in school. Rather than be slowly crushed by a hopeless life, I'd rather get beat up by Kenji. But guess what? Kenji didn't want to hit me anymore. He said he was tired. His dear father, Principal Sato, said, then let's just find a reason to expel him. He's a nuisance, better not to see him at all. You see? After all these years of struggling just to find a path forward, A single word from someone powerful, and that path vanished. But I couldn't just accept that. I had to force Kenji to raise his hand against me again. I lowered my head, looking at my clenched fists. The story I told Ayumi about that exam was a lie I made up on the spot. I was obsessed with Ayumi's face. That much was true, but compared to my future, she meant next to nothing. That time, I deliberately scored way higher than Kenji on the monthly test, not to impress Ayumi, but because I knew what would happen next. Sure enough, he was furious. He cornered me right after school in a dark alley. That alley was his usual spot for doing this kind of thing. Secluded, quiet, no witnesses. He and his goons could go all out. Even the painful moans would echo, giving the abuser double the thrill. That day, I was badly hurt. When I crawled out of the alley, I was covered in blood. But I knew then, I had found my path. I turned over my palm and revealed a pitch-black SD card. Smiling, I said, the dash cam at the entrance of that alley caught the whole thing. Kenji berating me. I told him, if you lay another finger on me, or if I get expelled, this video will be uploaded to every major video platform. Kenji thought I was insane. He said, you'd really post a video of yourself getting beat up like a dog, barking and crawling? Aren't you afraid it'll ruin you too? I burst into laughter and asked him, Kenji, I'm willing to rot in the dirt. Are you? Of course he wasn't. But he couldn't accept defeat either. So in the end, he decided to send you to my side. Ayumi shook her head in disbelief. She said, I didn't know any of this. I nodded. I said, of course I knew. It had nothing to do with you. Her eyes lit up for a second. She said, then does that mean I didn't let her finish. I cut her off and said, but you still enabled him. You're just as shameless and vile. Ignoring the pale look on her face, I stabbed every word like a knife. So why were you so angry just now? Kenji wasn't wrong. I do want revenge. Why should the bullied suffer all their life while the bullies live carefree and proud? I will take everything he cares about with my own hands. His ranking, his future, his girlfriend. I will be the one to throw him into prison and make sure every minute, every second he spends in there, he remembers he lost everything because of every punch he threw at me, every scar he left. It's karma. It's what he deserves. And you? You're just one of the tools I used for revenge. Ayumi swayed, then finally choked out a question. Did you really never love me at all? I replied, of course I liked your face. I liked your body. But you as a person? Never. Not for a single second. As I turned to leave, I heard a dull thud behind the door. It was the sound of Ayumi collapsing to the floor. I didn't hesitate. I closed the door and locked it behind me. By now, Kenji had probably already been taken to the police station. Before coming to see Ayumi, I had gone to the police. I submitted the video as evidence and had my injuries examined at the hospital. Next, I would file a lawsuit. I would hire the best lawyer to make sure that this demon received the punishment he deserved. Something sharp was digging painfully into my hand. I looked down and realized it was the SD card. My fist had been clenched so tightly that it had cut my palm. Blood dripped onto the black SD card, staining it red for a moment before the color faded. Just like that night. It was pouring rain that night. Kenji had vented his anger and left, and I waited beside the car, drenched in blood. After I explained the situation, the car's owner looked at me with sympathy but said, I'm sorry for what you've been through, but Principal Sato is very powerful in our small town. I can't afford the risk. I'm sorry. I didn't push further and turned to leave. But the next day, this same person stopped me on my way home from school and handed me the SD card. She looked at my still bruised and battered body, then awkwardly turned away to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. Choking up, she said, I have a child too. No mother with a heart could bear to watch something like that. I never told her that alley had 3 exits that night. There was a car parked near each exit. Between the black BMW and the gray Volvo, I had chosen the 3rd exit, the one with the car covered in cartoon stickers. While Kenji was bullying me, I forced myself into the dash cam's field of view on that car. How cruel I am. I manipulated an innocent, soft-hearted mother. But someone born with no favor from fate can only desperately grip every possible bargaining chip. I had no choice. When I stepped out of the hotel, the wind that had been howling earlier had died down and the rain had stopped. The sun finally broke through the clouds, shining its light equally on everyone, including me. I blinked. Hiroshi. If from now on your life is no longer ravaged by storms, would you choose to be a good man? After wavering between two major university recruitment teams, I finally chose Beijing. I came from an ordinary world, wading through hardship, and I wanted to see what the world of elites and brilliance looked like. During that time, my parents, who had vanished from my life for 3 full years, showed up after seeing me in the news, saying how much they missed me. My response was to turn and run, instantly block and delete them from everything. Furious and humiliated, they lost it and came straight to my door. My dad said, "You think I ever wanted you? Your name used to be just a spare. You were completely unnecessary. You were the bastard seed your mom got from God knows what men in this house. In this world, no one ever wanted you. You're a burden. The fact that I let you live and grow up, you should be grateful." My mom cried, "Don't listen to him, he's crazy." I asked him to do a paternity test, and he always refused. Every time he beats us up, he uses this excuse. "Don't you remember I endured so much to raise you? I suffered so much. You can't just leave me behind. You can't pretend I'm not your mother." Seeing I stayed silent, they threatened to go to the media. They said they'd expose how I rose to fame only to turn my back on my poor parents, that I, the so-called most popular top scorer on the internet, would never be able to hold my head up again. I said, "Then I'll use my million-follower account to post every day. I'll tell everyone just how warm and loving this family was. How the father gambled away everything until his son had nowhere to live. How the mother tried to push her own child off a balcony just to get the husband back. I'll broadcast every single thing they ever did and drag their whole miserable family down with me." And finally, the world quieted down. That day, I hummed and sang all the way home. "I'm Hiroshi. I'm not a spare." In my sophomore year, I was invited to give the opening speech for the new semester. I had never prepared so meticulously for a speech because I knew watching from behind the cameras might be countless kids just like the old me, stuck in the mud. That day, I wore the most presentable outfit I owned and stood tall and proud before them. I wanted them to see what someone who clawed their way out of the mud could become. I wanted to plant a seed in their hearts. At the end of the speech, I opened my arms toward the camera and said, "If you're stuck in the mud, if everything around you is trying to drag you down, then remember, cut away the thorns and make yourself a raft. Stack up your burdens and make yourself a step. Only you can pull yourself out of the swamp. Only you can walk into the open fields, chase the stars, and head for the faraway. I've gone ahead. I'll be waiting for you on the road ahead." After stepping off stage, one of the guest speakers, a senior girl, stopped me and said, "Everyone's going out for dinner after the event. Want to join us, Junior?" I was just about to say yes when I spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Our eyes met. She turned to leave, but I called out, "Wait." It had been over a year since the day at the hotel when I last saw Yumi. Her face was still as beautiful as ever, but the radiance and arrogance from the past were gone, replaced by exhaustion carved between her brows. Clutching the hem of her clothes, she looked nervous. She bit her lip and said, "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just wanted to see you from afar." After she spoke, she stared at me for a long, long time, like she was trying to compress time into a single moment to tuck away, to sustain the long days of remembering me alone. Only after a while did she look away and say, eyes downcast, "In the beginning, I kept thinking time would dull even the strongest emotions. That maybe we'd still have a chance. But then watching you soar higher and farther, seeing your world expand, I realized, you're a man born to fly like an eagle. And someone like me doesn't deserve for you to turn back." I had no words. I never cared for poetic sentiments like that. Casually, I handed her a bank card with 50,000 yuan on it. This wasn't hush money, and it wasn't some bleeding heart compensation for her wasted youth. I said, "There's 50,000 yuan on this card. It's everything I spent during our time together. I'm paying it back." Obviously, back when I was with Ayumi, I had no spare cash for hotels or trips. Most of that spending came from her, and she willingly paid because that was the price she bore to pull me down. Maybe some would say I'm shameless, despicable, but so what? If I could start painting my life in color a little earlier, why wouldn't I? Ayumi instinctively tried to push the card back, but I stopped her. I said, "Ayumi, I'm giving you this not because I owe you." I smiled and added, "I simply borrowed from the future value of my own ability, and now I've come to cash it out." As I turned to leave, Ayumi called after me, Hiroshi, I'll never meet another man like you in this lifetime. Her voice was thick with love and regret. I didn't look back, just waved and said, damn right. I'm one of a kind with a brilliant future ahead. Goodbye forever. Everyone else had already headed to the dinner spot. Only the senior girl was still waiting by the exit. When she saw me come out, she pointed toward Ayumi and asked, your ex? I smiled and nodded. Yeah. She gave a short snort and said, she's definitely beautiful. The kind of look that's hard for any man to resist. But faces like hers, even nationwide, it'd be tough to find a replacement that fits the same mold. I raised an eyebrow, signaling her to just say what she wanted. She blinked, then said seriously, Junior, now that you're in college, has your taste in partners changed at all? She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes lowered, and said, take me. Decent looks, good personality, emotionally stable, not clingy. Come from a respectable family, mentored by top professors. So tell me, do you like this big sister type? I only smiled, neither agreeing nor denying. The road ahead is long, why rush to choose? If I'm going to keep climbing higher, then what worry do I have about not seeing the best sights? I'm Hiroshi. I'm never a spare.